At 64, I thought I had already endured the pinnacle of heartbreak. Losing Hilda 3 months ago had left a hole in my life so vast that I sometimes wondered how I had managed to breathe through it. The quiet of our house was oppressive, a constant reminder of absence. Every morning I would wake to an empty bed, an empty kitchen, the faint scent of her perfume lingering only in my memory. It was the kind of grief that pressed against your chest so relentlessly that you barely noticed the hours slipping past. And sometimes I would find myself standing in the hallway, staring into rooms she had once filled with life, as if searching for her shadow. And then came Wesley, my son, the boy I had raised with care, attention, and patience, who I had stayed up late for when he missed curfew, who I had helped through college, who I had once watched with pride learning to ride his bike in the driveway, was suddenly a stranger. It wasn't just that he was careless, it was that he didn't seem to understand, or even want to understand, the gravity of loss. I had been looking for Hilda's purse for days. It was more than just leather and stitching. It was hers. Every crease and scuff told a story. Every compartment held fragments of her routine. And every smell reminded me that she had existed, that she had been here, shaping the rhythm of our lives. It was my tether to her in a world that suddenly felt unmoored. And Wesley's words hit me like a punch to the gut. I selfish sold it. I needed money for my cruise. Phased. The words were flat, almost casual, as if he were discussing what kind of coffee to get at the shop down the street. My heart skipped, stuttered, and then crashed as reality dawned. "You sold it?" I asked, my voice breaking even before I could stop it. "Yeah, Dad. I needed the money. Melissa expects me to pay for both of us." He didn't even bother to look up from his phone, sprawled across the couch as if he owned the place. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. The familiar sight should have been comforting, but right then, it was infuriating. Offsets. You sold my wife's purse?" I stammered. The words sounded inadequate, feeble, insufficient to convey the sense of betrayal crushing my chest. "It was just sitting there collecting dust," Wesley replied, shrugging. There it was, the indifference, the lack of understanding. That shrug tore at something inside me more than words ever could. "This purse," I began, trying to steady my shaking hands, "was hers. The one she carried every day for 15 years. The one that held her world together." Wesley's eyes finally flicked up to mine, but not with remorse, not with guilt, not with recognition of what he had done. There was irritation there, a dismissiveness that made my throat tighten and my chest ache. "Look, I needed the money, okay? The cruise leaves next week. Melissa expects me to pay. You know how women are." Froze. The words were an insult, a cruel slash at the heart of my memory of Hilda. It wasn't just the money, it was the way he reduced her existence, her life, her presence, to a transaction, a minor inconvenience to be brushed aside for vacation plans. You don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the roar in my ears. "Dad, it's just a purse," Wesley said. "Mom's gone. She doesn't need it anymore." The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. My mind raced. The purse wasn't just an object. It was a vessel for her daily rituals. The way she would pull out receipts, count her cash, check her lipstick, and adjust her small personal items before bed. These were ordinary moments, yes, but they were hers. They were tangible proof that she had lived, loved, and existed in a way that now mattered more to me than anything else in the world. "How could you?" I asked finally, my voice breaking under the weight of grief and disbelief. "How could you sell her last belongings for a cruise?" Wesley rolled his eyes, a gesture that felt like a slap. "Dad, come on. You're being dramatic. If it makes you feel better, maybe I can buy you something from the cruise. They have good jewelry in the Caribbean." I stared at him. Really stared. I wanted to see the boy I knew, the one who had once begged me for a baseball glove or stayed up with me waiting for a thunderstorm to pass. I wanted to see some flicker of recognition that he had crossed a line. But there was nothing. Only indifference. Only a shrug. Only the casual cruelty of a man who thought grief could be bargained with. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and cold. Get out. What? Get out of my house. Take your things and go. Wesley's face shifted to surprise, his irritation momentarily replaced by confusion. You're overreacting. It's just a stupid purse. I felt my chest tighten further, anger mixing with sorrow. Nothing about your mother was stupid. And the fact that you can't understand that, the fact that you think it's okay to take the one thing I treasured most and sell it for vacation money, tells me everything I need to know about who you are. For a brief second, I thought I saw something flicker across his face. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was understanding. But it passed, replaced once again by defiance. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Fine. I'm going to Melissa's anyway. Maybe when you calm down, you'll realize I was trying to help. That purse was just making you more depressed. And for the record, Dad, Mom would want me to be happy. She'd understand why I needed the money. Disregard shut behind him, leaving me in a silence so profound it pressed against my eardrums. The house felt enormous, empty, hollowed out by the absence of both Hilda and the son I thought I knew. I walked slowly to the dresser where her purse had sat and ran my fingers over the dust-covered rectangle that proved it had been there, that I hadn't imagined it. The wedding photo beside it caught my eye. Hilda's young face staring back at me, full of hope and dreams, oblivious to the tragedies that awaited us. I sat in the recliner she had loved, cup of coffee in hand, and stared at the spot where her purse once rested. I thought of the small routines we shared, the ordinary moments that now felt like treasures stolen from me. I thought of Wesley, the boy I had raised, and wondered where I had gone wrong. Was it me? Could I have been a better father? Could I have prepared him for this moment of life's cruelty? Or was he simply incapable of understanding love, grief, and memory in the way that mattered? The night stretched endlessly. Sleep refused me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Wesley's face, that indifferent shrug, those words, just sitting there collecting dust. I realized then that the real heartbreak wasn't only losing Hilda. It was watching the son I had raised reduce her existence, reduce her memory, reduce her life to a casual transaction. And I feared, perhaps correctly, that he never would understand. Not fully, not ever. By dawn, I dressed and prepared myself for the task ahead. I would go to Jimmy's pawn shop on 5th Street. I would offer whatever it took to get Hilda's purse back, even if it meant sacrificing some of our savings. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was her. It was the last fragment of her that I could hold, the tangible connection that still smelled faintly of her, that still carried her essence. And so I set out, heart heavy, hands clenched, determination and sorrow coiling together like a rope around my chest, ready to face a world I no longer recognized, to reclaim what was lost, not just the purse, but a piece of my life, a piece of my soul, and the memory of Hilda that no one, not even my own son, could take from me. The drive to Jimmy's pawn shop felt longer than it actually was. 5th Street, a rundown stretch of the city I had passed countless times, never appeared so grim, so lifeless. The laundromat, the check-cashing place, the peeling paint of old storefronts, all of it seemed to echo the emptiness I felt inside. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the leather pressing into my knuckles as if it could offer any comfort at all. Hilda's purse weighed heavy in my thoughts even though it wasn't yet in my hands. It wasn't just leather, fabric, and stitching. It was Hilda. Every crease, every faint mark, every faint lingering scent of her perfume held fragments of her daily life, her laughter, her presence. Wesley's betrayal still reverberated in my mind. I couldn't understand how someone I had raised with love, care, and patience could treat the memory of their own mother so casually. Every glance I remembered of him as a boy, learning to ride his bike, waiting anxiously for him to return from late-night study sessions, helping him with math problems at the kitchen table, felt distant, as though a lifetime had passed and the boy I knew had vanished, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I parked my car outside the pawn shop and sat there for a moment, taking in the grimy windows, the small bell above the door, the faded sign that read Jimmy's Pawn Shop. The air was thick with dust, exhaust fumes, and something chemical I couldn't immediately place. Inside, the smell of old leather, metal, and faint perfume hit me as I opened the door, and it felt like stepping into another world. A world where people traded memories, desperation, and hope for quick cash. Jing, a bell chimed as I entered. Glass cases lined the walls, displaying watches, jewelry, electronics, and various trinkets. Behind the counter, a man, perhaps in his early 50s, with graying hair and eyes that had clearly witnessed every kind of human desperation, looked up. His gaze flicked toward the back room, then back at me, and I caught something there, a flicker of fear, a hesitation I couldn't immediately explain. "Bishops, help you with something?" he asked, his voice weary but cautious. "Jamal sold you a burgundy leather purse yesterday," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, even as my heart pounded like a drum. "I'd like to buy it back." Overthrow, his expression changed instantly. He glanced again toward the back, then back at me. "Sir, are you sure you want it?" His words were strange, tinged with uncertainty. "Yes. I don't care what it costs. It's not just a purse. It belonged to my wife. It's all I have left of her." My voice cracked on the last words, betraying the emotional steel I had tried to summon. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It's in the back," he said, and disappeared through a narrow doorway, leaving me to stand among the artifacts of other people's desperation. Each item in the cases felt like a fragment of a life discarded, a memory reduced to cash. I shivered, realizing that Hilda's purse, too, had become just another object in this strange, sorrowful economy. A few moments later he returned, carrying the purse carefully in both hands. The burgundy leather was scuffed and worn in places, but it still radiated the quiet elegance that had always been hers. The sight of it made my chest tighten, my throat ache. This was more than a material object. It was a vessel of memory, of love, of the life Hilda had lived and the life we had shared. "Sir, there was something unusual," the man said cautiously. "A false bottom, something inside." Restrained. My mind raced. A false bottom? Hilda's purse had been her constant companion for 15 years. If there was a hidden compartment, what had she left there? Why had she kept it a secret? And what had Wesley unknowingly done by selling it? The pawnshop man watched me closely, perhaps sensing the storm of emotion building inside me. I don't know what it is," he continued. "I didn't touch it. I just saw it when I opened the purse. It's unusual. Could be valuable. Could be dangerous. I don't know. That's why I hesitated to sell it yesterday." My hands trembled as I took the purse. It was heavier than I remembered, not just in weight but in significance. I felt the leather under my fingers, the familiar texture, the faint aroma that still clung to it. Hilda's presence seemed to echo through it, stronger than any memory, more tangible than any photograph. "What see?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Shrugged. "It's hard to describe. Some sort of compartment, hidden underneath the lining. Nothing obvious, but whatever it is, I thought you should know before touching it." Nodded slowly, a knot forming in my stomach. My mind spun with possibilities. Hilda had been meticulous in her routines. Every day she organized her purse with care, arranging receipts, cash, and personal items with a precision I had always admired. If she had hidden something, it was intentional, meaningful, and important. And now it was back in my hands. The ride home was tense, my grip tight around the purse, each stoplight a moment of reflection and dread. What had Hilda hidden? And how had Wesley's casual betrayal potentially disturbed it? My thoughts tumbled over one another, fear, grief, and curiosity intermingling in a way that left me breathless. Back in the house, the emptiness of every room was amplified. I set the purse carefully on the kitchen counter, examining it, tracing the seams, feeling for any irregularities. Slowly, I discovered the subtle line of stitching that indicated a false bottom. My fingers hesitated. What could be inside? Money? A letter? Something she had never told me about? I lifted the hidden flap carefully. Inside, I found a small, wrapped bundle. My heart raced as I unwrapped it, revealing Hilda's handwriting on a folded note, her delicate script as familiar as the sound of her voice. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. There are things I couldn't tell you while I lived, things I hoped you would understand when the time came. I trust you to protect them. They are yours, but only if you are ready. Tears welled in my eyes. My wife had left me one final message, hidden in the object I had treasured most, preserved for a moment like this. The betrayal of Wesley, the loss, the grief, all of it coalesced into a sharp, aching clarity. Hilda had left me a part of herself, a trust, a secret, and I was its sole guardian now. The note continued, instructing me to look further in the bundle. Carefully, I unfolded the layers, revealing photographs, receipts, letters, and small trinkets. Each item told a story of our life together, memories I hadn't remembered or had long forgotten. It was a treasure trove of intimacy and love, hidden beneath the everyday object of her purse. A reminder that even in death, Hilda's thoughtfulness transcended her absence. Yet, as I sifted through the contents, a shadow of anger and betrayal returned. Wesley had sold this treasure without a thought, without a single consideration for what it meant. The thought of his casual dismissal, his shrug, his eye roll, mingled with my grief, igniting a fire of sorrow and fury. I realized something essential. This was no longer just about a purse. It was about understanding, about memory, about protecting what remains when those we love are gone. It was about responsibility, not just for objects, but for legacy, for honor, for the fragile things we hold in our hearts when everyone else is blind to their significance. That night, I sat with the contents of the purse spread across the kitchen table, drinking in every detail, reading every note, examining every photograph. Hilda's voice, her spirit, her essence, seemed to fill the empty spaces of the house. And in that moment, I understood a truth that was as beautiful as it was painful. Grief is not only about absence, it is about presence, what we carry with us, how we honor it, and how we defend it against indifference. The house was quiet, the night stretching long and endless. Wesley's betrayal lingered in the air, but for the first time since her passing, Hilda's presence felt undeniably real. I closed my eyes, holding the purse to my chest, letting the warmth of her memory seep through me. She had left me her secrets, her trust, her love, and I would honor them, no matter what it took, no matter how broken the world seemed, no matter how estranged my son had become. The morning after I retrieved Hilda's purse from Jimmy's pawn shop, I awoke with a sense of determination I hadn't felt in weeks. The house was still quiet, too quiet. But this time the silence wasn't oppressive. Instead, it held potential, possibility. Hilda had left me a trail, a hidden truth carefully preserved within the very object I had thought lost. Wesley's betrayal had hurt me, yes, but it also forced me to confront the reality that I was now the sole guardian of her final secrets. I brewed a strong cup, which has got me along. I discovered this when I delivered a telement, the when I start something back in Derry. When they lifted Hilda's purse of Jimmy's prawn shop, I still captures with the Frenches. Leslie truth with her still truth. I thought that I was not removed to her. The final truth is worse too. High like, I called Hilda's presentage to wernful so, and show you an unside. This was quite tilly. I wanter them, the truth that fill in companies, which I was cold in flexure of Hilda's purse, which I didn't too. Somehow brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the purse in front of me. The sunlight filtered through the half-drawn curtains, illuminating the faded leather and revealing tiny scratches and scuffs that spoke of years of use. I ran my fingers over the surface, feeling the familiar texture, the bumps and indentations that made it unmistakably hers. And then I focused on the hidden compartment, the false bottom that had been overlooked by both my son and the pawn shop owner. The thrill of discovery mixed with a heavy, persistent grief. I had imagined this moment countless times since Hilda's passing, finding something she had left behind, a tangible connection that would somehow bridge the impossible gap between life and death. And now, holding her purse, I was living that moment. But even amid the thrill, a shadow of unease lingered. Why had Hilda hidden these items? What urgency had led her to bury her last messages and tokens beneath the leather and stitching of an everyday object? Slowly, I lifted the flap. Inside lay a bundle, carefully wrapped in soft tissue paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, revealing layers of photographs, letters, and small mementos. Each piece told a story, a trip we had taken decades ago, candid photos of our wedding, notes she had written me over the years, reminders of moments both mundane and extraordinary. Her handwriting was delicate, precise, yet unmistakably intimate. It was as though she had left me her voice in physical form, a way to speak to me, even after she was gone. Then I saw it, a small, locked envelope, yellowed with age but clearly important. Hilda's name was written on it in her careful script. My pulse quickened. The envelope was addressed not to me directly, but to the one who truly needs to see. It was ambiguous yet profoundly personal. Hesitating only for a moment, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. If you are reading this, it means Hilda is gone, and grief has taken its toll. I have left a part of myself within this purse, hidden from the world, to be discovered when the time is right. It is not just a collection of memories, but a test, a reflection of love, trust, and understanding. Whoever finds this must understand the value of what is truly important, not just in objects, but in life itself. Guard it, protect it, never allow indifference to desecrate it, as some may try. Some will not understand, some will fail. You will know them. I froze. The meaning was clear, but the implications were terrifying. Hilda had known, perhaps instinctively, that someone I loved, might not respect the sanctity of her memory. She had left me not just memories, but a challenge, a call to action. The thought of Wesley and his casual dismissal of her life surged in my chest, a painful reminder that not everyone understood the value of love, grief, and legacy. My gaze fell back to the purse, to its familiar shape, to the tactile reality of her presence within it. It struck me that the purse itself had been a vessel, a safe container for not only material objects, but also the intangible essence of Hilda. And now, having it back, I felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on my shoulders. Hours passed as I carefully cataloged the contents, examining each photograph, each letter, each note. Hilda had left instructions, small hints embedded in the writings, places we had visited together, moments I might have forgotten, secrets only I would recognize. But among the photographs, one image stood out, a photo I had never seen before. It depicted a small, nondescript building, clearly taken decades ago, yet its significance was hidden, mysterious. On the back, Hilda had written only one word: find. Raced. Find what? Why had she included this? And what did it have to do with the rest of the items? My heart pounded as I realized that this wasn't just a simple collection of memories. It was a puzzle, carefully constructed by the woman I had loved for more than 3 decades. Emligence. In the middle of my reverie, the house creaked. The sound of the front door opening sent a shiver down my spine. I hadn't expected anyone. Wesley? No, he wouldn't dare. But the presence of someone else, of the world intruding on this sacred discovery, made me instinctively clutch the purse closer to my chest. Enslinced. It was Wesley. His face was familiar, yet now it seemed alien. He had come back, unannounced, carrying a faint smugness, as if he had returned to reclaim something that had always belonged to him. "Dad," he said casually, leaning against the doorway, "I thought maybe you'd want some of the cruise photos." Melissa took a bunch. Premiership. I stared at him, my hands still on the purse. "You don't understand," I said quietly. "This is not about vacations. This is about Hilda. Do you even remember what that purse meant? Wesley shrugged, his usual defense mechanism. It's just a purse, Dad. You're acting like it's, I don't know, sacred or something. She's gone. Move on. Obstruction. I felt a familiar ache twist deep in my chest. That shrug, that dismissive tone. It was a reminder that the son I knew, the boy I had nurtured, the young man I had guided, was gone. In his place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who could look at grief and memory and see nothing but inconvenience. No, Wesley, I said, my voice firmer now, carrying the weight of grief and authority. It's not just a purse. It's everything that remains of her. And you don't get to decide what is important and what isn't. He rolled his eyes and shook his head, clearly unimpressed. Dad, seriously, you're being dramatic. You need to get over it. It's just stuff. You can't live in the past forever. But the purse in my hands was more than stuff. It was the last tangible piece of Hilda's existence, a container for her memories, her secrets, her life. And now it was my duty to protect it, to understand it, and to respect it in a way Wesley never could. I made a decision. Wesley would not take it from me again. I would not allow his indifference, his ignorance, or his selfishness to desecrate what she had left behind. This was her final gift, her voice beyond death, and I would honor it. I sat there, examining the photograph labeled "Find." I realized that this journey, begun with a simple search for a purse, had become something far more profound. It was a journey into memory, love, betrayal, and the fragile, complex threads that connect us to those we have lost. Hilda had left me not just objects, but a mission, to uncover the truths hidden within the everyday, to preserve what others might discard, and to confront the uncomfortable realities about those I trusted most. And I knew, with a certainty that cut through the haze of grief, that Wesley's indifference was only the beginning. The challenges ahead would test me, my patience, my understanding, and my very capacity for forgiveness. But I also knew that I would not falter. For Hilda, for her memory, and for the fragments of love that still lingered in this world, I would see this through to the end. Night fell, and I sat in the recliner, the purse on my lap, the photograph beside it. The shadows of the room seemed to deepen, mirroring the weight of what I carried. Hilda had left me her legacy, carefully hidden, intricately arranged, and now it was up to me to unravel it. Tomorrow, I would begin the search indicated by the photograph. I didn't yet know what I would find, or what dangers might lie ahead. But I felt a spark of purpose rekindled within me, a resolve that grief alone could not extinguish. Hilda's final message was clear: treasure what is sacred, protect what is hidden, and never allow indifference to take hold. And I would not. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, spilling across the living room and illuminating Hilda's purse resting on the coffee table. I had spent the night turning over every detail in my mind, unable to sleep, consumed by a mixture of grief, anger, and curiosity. The photograph labeled "Find" sat beside it, beckoning me into a journey I hadn't anticipated, one that seemed to stretch beyond memory and into the very essence of Hilda's life. I traced my fingers along the leather, feeling the familiar texture and imagining her hands doing the same years ago. She had been meticulous, precise, and careful. Everything she did had meaning. Even this small, unassuming purse had been a vessel for secrets, memories, and messages. And now, it was in my hands, calling me to discover what had been hidden all along. The photograph depicted a building I recognized vaguely from a drive years ago, but never truly paid attention to. A small brick structure tucked between two larger, nondescript buildings on the outskirts of the city. On the back of the photo, Hilda had written a cryptic note: "The answers are here. Only look when ready." I wasn't sure I was ready, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. The mystery gnawed at me. Hilda had been a private woman, careful about what she shared and whom she trusted. That she had left this trail, hidden within her purse, suggested that what awaited me at this building was something of profound importance, perhaps even dangerous. I had to see it for myself. After a quick breakfast, I dressed carefully and slipped the purse over my shoulder, placing the photograph safely in my pocket. I locked the house behind me and drove to the location, the streets strangely quiet in the mid-morning sun. My mind wandered to Wesley, to the casual cruelty with which he had sold the purse, and the deep disappointment that still hung in the air like a thick fog. How could he not understand? How could he reduce my wife's memory, her life, her love, to a few $100s and a vacation? The building came into view faster than expected. It was small, unremarkable, almost invisible amid the taller structures surrounding it. Its brick facade was weathered, the windows dusty and opaque, yet there was something about it that drew me in, a subtle sense of anticipation. My pulse quickened as I parked and approached the front door. Inside, the air was heavy, tinged with the scent of old paper, dust, and a faint floral perfume that sent shivers down my spine. Hilda had been here. That much was clear. Every corner, every shadow, seemed imbued with her presence. I moved cautiously, scanning the room for any clues, for anything that might connect the building to the contents of her purse. I found a small desk tucked into a corner, almost hidden from view. On it lay a stack of envelopes, each carefully labeled in Hilda's handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked up the first one, recognizing the meticulous attention to detail she had always applied. Each envelope contained letters, photographs, and documents that chronicled aspects of our life together I had never fully understood or remembered. One envelope caught my attention. Its label read, "For him, when he is ready to forgive and understand." I opened it slowly, and inside was a letter written in Hilda's familiar script. "If you are reading this, it means you have chosen to seek understanding and honor the love we shared. There are things I could not tell you, fears I could not voice, and decisions I made that you may never understand. But know this, my love for you never wavered, and my hope was always that you would see, even after I am gone, that life is fragile, memory is sacred, and love transcends all mistakes." Tari blurred my vision as I read the words. She had left me not just objects, but a philosophy, a guide for living without her, for preserving what mattered most. Each envelope I opened revealed a layer of her life I had never fully grasped. Letters from her own childhood, photographs of family members I barely remembered, notes on her hopes for our future, and meticulous documentation of her finances, her will, and even plans for charitable donations she had quietly managed. And then I found it, a small locked box wrapped in velvet. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the lock delicate but clearly meant to protect its contents. I realized with a start that this must have been the ultimate secret Hilda had hidden within her purse, the object she had prepared for me to find only when I was ready. I examined the lock carefully. Their respective wall, the finance of instigation, which his lock is just a standard for relationship. It was kind of like, I pursed in instaquences, the generation with Hilda's, the finance of not happen to it short that she was wellis, the system set with Hilda's for me, which is only well still subscribed. This lock was always less when the lock carefully. There was no key inside the purse, but there was a note tucked beneath the velvet. "The key is in plain sight, where we first promised forever." My mind raced. Where we first promised forever. That had to mean our wedding chapel, the small church where Hilda and I had exchanged vows 35 years ago. My hands shook with a mix of anticipation and grief as I realized the next stage of this journey required me to revisit the place where our love had been immortalized. The thought of returning to the chapel filled me with emotion. It had been 3 months since her passing, and the world seemed unbearably heavy. But I knew that Hilda's instructions were precise, intentional. She had left this challenge for me, trusting that I would follow her guidance, that I would protect her memory, and that I would confront truths I had long avoided. As I prepared to leave the building, a sudden noise made me pause. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate. My pulse quickened. I turned to see a man standing near the doorway, his face partially obscured by shadow. "Looking for something?" he asked, his tone flat but edged with caution. I instinctively stepped back, clutching the purse closer. I, I'm not sure, I admitted. I'm following instructions left by my wife. She was here. This belonged to her. Dismissing. Man's eyes narrowed. Hilda? He said, as if the name carried weight. You're her husband? Legalization. Yes, I replied cautiously, sensing both curiosity and potential danger in his expression. She left these items for me to find. I need to understand, to protect them. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She trusted you then, more than anyone else. That's rare. Be careful. Some things are hidden for a reason. Some truths aren't meant for everyone. His words sent a chill down my spine. What did he mean? What dangers awaited me as I pursued Hilda's secrets? The weight of responsibility pressed down like never before. This was more than a personal journey. It was a test of my understanding, my patience, and my loyalty to the woman I had loved for decades. Stealth the building and returned home, the locked box and photograph safely in my possession. Wesley had not returned, and for the first time, I felt a sharp relief. His indifference had caused deep pain, but it had also removed any immediate interference. I was free to pursue Hilda's instructions without distraction. That night, I sat in my recliner, the purse on my lap, the photograph beside me, and the box wrapped in velvet resting on the coffee table. The house was silent, save for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of settling wood. I realized that the journey ahead would not be simple. Hilda had left me clues, but she had also left challenges, emotional, practical, and perhaps even dangerous. And yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was clarity. This was my mission, my responsibility. Wesley's betrayal, painful as it had been, no longer seemed the central concern. The central concern was Hilda, her legacy, and the truth she had buried in plain sight for me to discover. As I drifted into a restless sleep, the photograph of the building still before me, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow, I would go to the chapel. Tomorrow, I would find the key, and with it, I would uncover the final layer of Hilda's carefully hidden life, and perhaps, finally, understand the full depth of her love and wisdom. The sun had barely risen when I left for the chapel, the locked box tucked securely under my arm, and Hilda's purse slung over my shoulder. The streets were quiet, the early morning air crisp with the faint tang of autumn leaves, and the city seemed suspended in a delicate, fragile calm. My heart raced, a mixture of grief, anticipation, and determination. Hilda had left me this final journey, and I was determined to follow it to its conclusion. Plumbing to the chapel, I replayed every memory I had of that small brick building where Hilda and I had exchanged our vows. I remembered her dress, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held mine, the sparkle in her eyes as we promised forever to each other. It felt surreal, almost cruel, that 3 decades later I was returning, not as a husband celebrating life, but as a widower seeking the hidden truths she had left behind. When I arrived, the chapel was as it had always been, modest, unassuming, yet somehow timeless. The bells above the entrance were silent, the stone steps worn from decades of footsteps, and the wooden doors weathered but intact. I paused at the threshold, placing my hand on the familiar brass handle, and took a deep breath. Hilda had entrusted me with a secret, and I would honor it. Inside, the air was cool, scented faintly with the remnants of candle wax and polished wood. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass, casting colorful patterns across the pews. It felt sacred, not because of religion alone, but because it was the place where love had been immortalized, where promises had been made, and where Hilda had now hidden the final key to her legacy. Jiang moved slowly to the altar, scanning for any sign, any clue. My eyes fell on the corner where we had once placed flowers after our wedding. There, tucked beneath a small plaque commemorating long married couples, was a small brass key, almost invisible unless one knew where to look. My pulse quickened. Hilda had been meticulous, precise. The key had been waiting for me all these years, preserved in plain sight until I was ready. With trembling hands, I returned home, the key now in my possession. The locked box on the coffee table seemed almost alive, vibrating with the promise of revelation. I inserted the key into the delicate lock and turned it slowly. The mechanism clicked, and I lifted the lid with great care, revealing the treasures Hilda had hidden from the world. Inside the box were letters, photographs, and documents, each meticulously arranged. Among them, I found something that made my heart skip, a small diary, bound in leather and embossed with her initials. Opening it, I discovered Hilda's private thoughts, confessions, and reflections on our life together. Each page was a testament to her love, her intelligence, and her depth of understanding. One passage caught my eye. If he reads this, it means I trusted him to follow the path I have left. Life is fragile, and grief is a test of endurance and love. I leave these items not as possessions, but as reminders that love persists beyond absence, that memory is sacred, and that forgiveness is the greatest gift we can give ourselves and others. She had not only left me memories, she had left me lessons. And yet, another note made my stomach twist with a mixture of fear and anger. It was addressed to Wesley. To Wesley, should you ever realize the depth of what you have lost, love is not measured in convenience, possessions, or vacations. It is measured in sacrifice, understanding, and empathy. Do not take the memory of those who love you for granted. That Hilda had foreseen his indifference, his inability to comprehend the significance of her purse, and she had left him a message not to punish him, but to teach him. She had anticipated betrayal, and yet she responded with compassion, foresight, and clarity. Among the letters, I discovered another envelope marked, "Emergency, if found by the wrong hands." Inside was a small, intricate key and a series of instructions leading to a safety deposit box at the bank, containing Hilda's most valuable possessions, heirlooms, savings, and a letter addressed to me and Wesley together. She had planned for the possibility of loss, theft, or misinterpretation, and had left a path to restore what was hers and protect what was sacred. I realized then that the purse, the false bottom, the hidden compartments, the locked box, they were all tests, designed not to conceal material wealth, but to reveal the character of those who sought them. Hilda had trusted me because I would honor her memory, confront grief with integrity, and protect the legacy of love she had built. Wesley, had he chosen to follow, might have learned, but only if he was willing to set aside selfishness. I sat in the living room for hours, reading, reflecting, and understanding the layers of her life that had always been invisible to me. The house felt alive with her presence, not haunting, but guiding, nurturing, and protective. The grief I had carried, so heavy and suffocating, began to transform into something more nuanced, reverence, purpose, and a deep abiding connection to Hilda that death could not sever. The next day I decided to confront Wesley, not in anger, but in hope that he might yet understand. He arrived as always, casual, indifferent. I placed the purse, the box, and the letters before him. "Do you understand now?" I asked softly. "This isn't just a purse. This is her life, her love, her trust, and you sold it without a thought." He looked at the items, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes, though it was mixed with confusion and guilt. I didn't know," he said quietly. "I didn't realize." I nodded. "You didn't realize because you never looked beyond the surface. But Hilda left a legacy, and it's our responsibility to honor it. You can still learn, still understand, but you must choose to do so." For the first time in months, I saw a hint of remorse. Not complete understanding, not full repentance, but the faintest glimmer that Wesley might one day comprehend the depth of love, loss, and memory. Over the next weeks, I guided him through Hilda's treasures, sharing stories behind each photograph, each letter, each memento. Slowly, he began to see the depth of what he had dismissed. And in that process, I began to forgive, Not just him, but myself. For the anger, the despair, the endless nights of grief. Hilda's lessons had worked. Love persisted. Memory was sacred. And understanding could be cultivated even after betrayal. The purse, once a symbol of loss, became a symbol of connection, bridging the past and the present, uniting me with Hilda and eventually with Wesley in a fragile but growing understanding. It reminded me that grief is not an endpoint, but a journey where love, memory, and forgiveness intersect. Years later, the purse remained on a shelf, alongside the photographs and letters, no longer hidden, no longer secret, but honored. Wesley, though still flawed, had grown in understanding and respect, learning that some treasures are beyond money, beyond convenience, and beyond self-interest. Wiser, and forever changed, realized that Hilda's final gift was not the objects she left behind, but the lessons she embedded within them. That love endures, memory is sacred, and even in the face of indifference, one can choose to honor what is true, precious, and eternal. In the quiet of the evening, sitting in my recliner, sipping coffee, I touched the burgundy leather of Hilda's purse, feeling the warmth of her presence, the guidance of her spirit, and the enduring power of love that death could never erase. The journey had been long, filled with sorrow, betrayal, and discovery. But in the end, it revealed something far more profound than grief: the resilience of the human heart and the legacy of a love that refuses to fade.